Hi guys, Scott here. I have opened my windows for the first time in many a year because only the light of God can prepare me for the amount of cocaine that was smoked when they made this patch. And I don't really even mean that in a bad way. This is the kind of patch I enjoy seeing. It's not like, okay, this perk does 5% thing instead of 4% thing, and survivors now last 61 seconds on hook instead of 70 seconds on hook. These are just like, back in the 80s, everyone just did a bunch of fucking coke. They just went ape shit. They're like, let's just restructure the whole game, brother. Let's see what happens. And you know what? I'm here for it. This is some crazy shit. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I briefly skimmed this, but as I read more and more, I was like, I think it would be better if I just read this as I was like reacting to it, because some of this shit is absolutely crazy. It will fundamentally change the entire game in multiple ways. So I think we should just get right into it. Very quick TLDR. Slugging and tunneling have been massively changed. Myers has somehow become dash slop, which is, I need to call Pixel Bush and just see if he's okay. So let's jump right into the first absolutely major change happening, the Slugging Reduction update. A lot of people thought this would be some type of base kit Unbreakable, some type of base kit Tenacity, or something similar but not quite the same, and that's kind of what happened. It's similar but not quite the same. So the first change that I think that is very good. If a survivor is left in the dying state for a total of 90 seconds during a match, they gain the ability to pick themselves up after fully recovering. I think that is completely fine. They still have to go through the entire bar to fill themselves back up, which means they're going to be on the ground for basically 2 minutes straight, and I think that is acceptable to let that survivor get back up. Really, this only punishes killers that are intentionally trying to slug everyone to death, which is a valid strategy, but also one of the most miserable things in the game to go against. So I think that addressing that with this type of change is completely fine. I have no issues with that at all. Frankly, if you do have an issue with that as killer, maybe, you know, restructure how you're playing the game, because holy shit, that is a miserable way to play. It's also just not even necessary. It's just like needlessly fucking mean to slug people for 4 minutes until they die. Usually you can at least hook them once they're on the ground. So usually this is not going to matter in 99% of games. Not a big deal at all. You can enable it or disable it in custom games, so tournaments can use it or not use it as they wish, which is great. I think that's fine. Here's the part that concerns me a little bit. So now you get gradually increased crawling speed when you're left in the dying state. Now, they've shown in this image here that it starts off like normal speed. So you're not really having to worry about just getting tenacity right off the bat there. So you can't like abuse this to crawl to a pallet faster than you normally would or something like that. So you don't have to worry about that. But to me, this is also sort of just an unnecessary thing that doesn't really matter. I think it's mostly fine, because like I said, you really only get the movement speed increase when you've been slugged for a while. By default, you're going to have nothing. So again, in most scenarios, if you're being slugged for 2 minutes, you will have made it to a pallet anyway. So it just lets you get to that pallet quicker or something like that. Like I said, it's not a huge deal, but it's also not something I found to be super necessary to add. This I don't agree with at all. So now you can recover while crawling by default immediately 1 second after you've been slugged. I think a gradually increasing movement speed is totally fine and not abusable, but giving survivors the ability to move and recover instantly, it does have ramifications on a lot of builds and playstyles and things like that. So for example, with something like Conviction, now you can get yourself to a pallet quicker, which makes the killer pressured even more. And then you can get your Conviction up at the same time as you're basically having a double safety net of the pallet and Conviction. Flip-flop Power Struggle will be massively buffed as well. You don't need to really bring Tenacity anymore, because you can recover and move that little bit of extra distance towards the pallet as well. So again, these are not cataclysmic huge changes or anything like that. It just does buff shit that I think doesn't need to be buffed. That's really the crux of the argument I'm making here. It's not that this is going to break the game or make it unplayable or anything like that. It's just, it kind of buffs things that were already fine. It's like if they made Nurse move 100 and if they made Nurse 2% faster, really it's not going to change very much, but it's also like, why would you do that? That wasn't necessary. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on that. Again, I think this first section is absolutely wonderful and a fantastic change. I'm mostly okay with this because it's not going to affect or really be abusable that much at all. This I am not really okay with. So I'm okay with like 60% of the stuff they're doing here. I think this particular change should probably not happen. And frankly, I would be surprised if it got pushed to live. But we'll see. It's not quite Tenacity. It's not quite Unbreakable. It's a mix of all this shit. I think mostly I'm slightly in favor of this, but it does need a little bit of tweaking to not buff things that are abusable, in my opinion. But we'll see. Overall, their dev notes just say when it comes to slugging, we know it can be frustrating if you're on the receiving end of it too often for too long, but we also know that sometimes it's the right move. The updated system acknowledges this, allowing the killer to slug occasionally when they feel like it's the right call, but eventually kick it and swing in the survivor's favor if slugging is used successfully. That's really all true, except the ability to recover immediately. That part really does not jive with what they actually have done with the changes here. So for the most part, that is going along with the dev note, but that last part kind of doesn't really make any sense. They're trying to make being slugged more pleasant by giving you some leniency and moving faster and things like that. But again, these things don't happen until you've been slugged for a while. So the dev notes are mostly congruent with what they're actually doing here, which is a big criticism I have. They'll have dev notes that don't align with the changes at all, but for the most part, I think they are at least aligning with their own vision here. Whether it's a good idea or not remains to be seen. Huddling reduction update. This change is, again, absolutely massive. So now when a survivor is hooked, their hook status is hidden from the killer. When they're unhooked, there's no notification and their hook status isn't revealed immediately. Basically what that means is when a survivor gets unhooked, you're not going to see the UI change, indicating that they're not hooked anymore, and you're not going to see the black bubble anymore, indicating that they're unhooked. And the delay between this happening and the killer seeing it is massive to determining whether or not this is going to be, I think, a little too much of a buff for Survivor. So the idea behind this is they want to give survivors a little bit of time to basically get away from the hook for killers that can very quickly return to the hook. So, for example, if you're playing Blight or something, you hear the unhook bubble, you're not in an active chase, what do? You go to the only source of information you have. You go back to the hook. And here's the thing why I have an issue with that. Very often, I will have hooked somebody, I'll not know where anybody else is. I'll wander around for 20 seconds. I'll see someone get unhooked, and then I'll go back to the hook. I won't even tunnel the guy that gets unhooked. I'll go for the unhooker. It's the only information I have in the map. It's information, for better or for worse, that killers rely on to play the game. If we are cutting a core piece of information away, it will punish people that are also not tunneling as well. So I will be negatively affected by this, even though I try my hardest to not tunnel, because I use that as information to at least find the unhooker. So what will people do in response to this? They'll probably proxy camp more so they can physically see the unhook happening and have information like that. That's why I think this has the potential to backfire massively, and I'm a little concerned about that. I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it so the survivor that gets unhooked has some time, but again, this really just disproportionately punishes killers that don't have mobility. A killer like the Ghoul can swing by and just check the hook every few seconds. Not a big deal. He's moving at Mach 50. A killer like, I don't know, Trapper has to haul his ass for 30 seconds to go, is someone still hooked there? I don't know. So you're going to have the scenario where weaker killers are kind of forced to proxy camp more unless they have direct information on another survivor that they can chase. So that might backfire massively, and I don't know that I agree with this change. Again, I understand where they're coming from, and I can respect it, but as a killer player that uses the unhook animation, uses the unhook bubble for information to not tunnel, just to start a new chase on a fresh survivor, I think this will punish me, which I don't think is their goal. So I don't think I like that change, kind of at all, actually, but we'll see. Unhooked survivors gain the following effects for a limited time: haste, endurance, and elusive. No collision with other players. So, I mean, this is something I have personally asked for years, probably 5 years straight now. Pretty much since they added the base kit borrowed time, I have said that they should do this, and it seems like they have finally done it. This is a fantastic change. This makes it so survivors that get unhooked are not able to aggressively use their endurance to body block or be a hindrance like that. You can just walk right through them and hit somebody else. Now, I've seen people make the argument, yeah, but the survivor could clip inside the other survivor and force an auto-aim hit. Dude, if you manage to perfectly clip inside another survivor for long enough that the killer can't hit the one he's going for, you deserve to take that hit. Because holy shit, that is so difficult. I can't express how moving, like the jank movement of like keeping directly in the same pixel as another survivor. If you can do that, you deserve to be rewarded, in my opinion. So that's not going to happen most of the time. I think this is a great change. It makes it so people cannot use their free borrowed time in an aggressive manner. They can only use it in a defensive way. So that's very, very good. Unhooked survivors now get immunity to killer instinct. These effects are lost when the affected survivor performs a conspicuous action, just like standard. And all these effects are disabled once all gens are completed. So now there's a unique effect on the killer hook state UI that indicates the last survivor that they hooked, so you're not accidentally hooking the same person twice in a row, which I personally think that's a fantastic idea. I'm a decaying, decrepit old man. Sometimes I'm like, hey, did I hook this Michaela? I don't remember. So that will be really nice to see because I'm usually not trying to hook the same people twice in a row, unless some dire circumstance or something like that. but they added a completing a unique hook benefit system, which I think is a cool idea. So my whole argument before I go on further here is if you are going to try to reward the killer for having unique hooks, which means not tunneling, you need to make the benefit as strong as tunneling a survivor out of the match on purpose. And that's very hard to do because getting a survivor out of the match is the strongest thing a killer can do. Now, if the survivor is really strong and it takes too long to do that, it can be still a losing decision for the killer. But it's just unanimous that if you get a guy out of the match early and make it a 3v1 early, the killer is most likely going to win. So you need to make the benefit for not doing that as strong or very close to as strong as that. Otherwise, people would just go, oh, that's nice, dear. Anyway, I'm going to keep doing this thing that works for me. So you need to have it be a pretty strong incentive, otherwise people will still stick with the strategy that works best for them. However, combined with the lack of information and the fact that they might have been a little bit stronger getting off the hook now, maybe killers will go for this more, which I guess is their intention. So when you get a unique hook, which is hooking a survivor that wasn't the last hook survivor, which means this can happen multiple times per match, like it's not just a first time per survivor, you can get this theoretically, like 8 times because you can just keep going back and forth or 10 times, whatever. So you get a bonus damage on your next generator kick. In all likelihood, it's going to go from like 5 to 10%. Probably nothing too crazy there. You get temporary haste, which could be nice. I'm not sure how fun that'll be for survivors to go against. Like if it's like 10% faster, you're like, why the fuck is this killer going faster all of a sudden? Oh, I got hit because why would I account for that? I guess you could know that the hook that happened, you got to pay attention to hooks as well. So again, the numbers here will be very important. If this is like 3 or 4% or 5%, who cares? If this is like 1 or 2 or 3%, who cares? But if these numbers are bigger, that suddenly becomes a much more prevalent thing to pay attention to. This one I really like. Temporarily reveals all survivors, like barbecue and chili biscuit, that have less or equal hook states to the hook survivor. So there's sort of a similar system to this in 2v8, where whenever like a gen is completed, you'll see the auras of everyone that has not been hooked yet, which I think is a really, really good idea that I'm actually kind of happy to see in the base game. This is actually a really cool change in my opinion. I am 100% for this. I think this makes it so spreading hooks are a lot easier. If you have somebody that is trying to rat all game, they will be a lot more visible. Now, it does, from what I can tell, reveal the auras, so you can still probably rat it with getting in a locker or something like that. I don't know if this is a killer instinct. It just says reveals. So I'm not sure the mechanic in which they're going to be revealed. So there are some things that you can't prevent, like Killer Instinct, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see in PTB. But overall, I am very, very okay with this change. I think this is completely fine. More than fine, I think this is actually a fantastic change. Giving the killer information to chase other people after they've gotten a unique hook is great. It also gives you map knowledge for knowing where people are, what gens they're working on, how much gens you're going to have left. Overall, I think this actually is a fantastic kind of buff to killers that play in a more pleasant way. So this is really, really good. I love this change. These effects are slightly lessened for the Blight, Dark Lord, Ghoul, Billy, and Nurse. I want to sit here and discuss how this is the most monumental line in the entire patch. Because this is, as far as I can tell, the first time ever we've had a mechanic or perk like this that is specifically nerfed by like the S or A plus tier killers, which is incredible. We have been asking for things like this since we had, Awakened Awareness was nerfed because of Nurse. And we were going, just nerf it for Nurse. You don't have to ruin it for everybody else. Nurse is clearly stronger. Just make it not as good as her. And they were like, hey, we want everyone to have the same perks. We don't want people to think it's different, blah, 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 blah. It seems this is the first time that they have finally acknowledged that, hey, you know what? Some killers might be better than some others. Let's make the game work a bit differently for them. And thank God, this is such a refreshing line to see. This is my favorite line in the entire patch notes. This actually is the first step in acknowledging that some killers are weaker than others and some killers are stronger than others, and the game must reflect that in order for it to be balanced. You can't just blanket balance the entire game based on every killer when Trapper exists and Nurse exists. It's impossible. So this is the first step, which I hope is of many steps, getting to a game in which perks and things like that are balanced depending on the killer that you're using. It doesn't have to be huge, but acknowledging these differences in strength is just a beautiful thing, and I am so, so happy to see that. So I'm hoping here is to the first of many for changes like this. That is a fantastic, awesome, great acknowledgement of the difference of killer strength that does need to happen. Fantastic. I can't sing the praises enough of that line. Added new effects that de-incentivize tunneling. If a survivor dies before 6 total hook states, all remaining survivors get a repair speed bonus for the rest of the trial. Again, you'll have to do math here and determine, is a survivor dying this early better than the bonus to gen speeds that the remaining players get? In all likelihood, it'll probably still be yes. It'll still be better to have a survivor dead than have the other survivors get that gen speed bonus. If it's something crazy like 25% or something, then maybe we got an issue. But if it's like, you get a 5% bonus to gen speeds or whatever, and I don't think anyone's going to care. They're just still going to tunnel because it's still a better reward. Quick little addition that I realized I missed while talking about this. There was a line here for the de-incentivization of tunneling where if the survivor that was last hooked is sacrificed or killed, generators cannot be regressed or blocked. That is a huge, huge downside. So I actually just completely missed that. And if that's something that permanently lasts, that is a pretty damn big incentive to not kill someone early. So, that actually has a huge ramification, and it's something I'm going to have to test with in-game, but I just want to acknowledge I did actually catch that at the end here, and that is actually massive. So, really, I don't know how much this is actually going to change. I do really think that rewarding good play, I am so happy to see this whole entire section. This is fantastic. The question is this incentive enough to outweigh the benefits of tunneling someone out? I don't think so. It's really going to come down to how delayed this information is. So this has the potential to shake up the game in an absolutely massive way, far more than the slugging update. This is just huge, systemic, crazy changes that I need to just play the PTB for. I think it's irresponsible to comment any further because we don't know the numbers on any of this shit. And the numbers are going to be the deciding factor whether or not these things are a good, bad, or a neutral change. The dev note quickly says, it is no secret that tunneling can be seen as an efficient way to play killers. While this can be true, it's also true that the results can be frustrating for survivors, leading to trials ending too soon, while others have to fend for themselves in a match that is now much more difficult. The intention here is for both roles to feel the benefit and incentives that come from spreading hook states. On one end, survivors have better opportunities to evade and reset after unhooks, while also limiting those tough situations where losing a survivor too quickly causes things to go south quickly and snowball. On the other end, killers are able to apply more map pressure to push back against efficient teams, covering ground post-hook and strengthening strengthening gen regression. So, again, I think their mind is in the right place here. I'm just not going to comment any further until we have actual numbers. The elusive status. A new status effect that silences the grunts of pain and suppresses survivor aura, pools of blood, and scratch marks. It's basically like Lucky Break and Off the Record combined. So this is just an effect that you get when you are unhooked for the same amount of time that you get haste and endurance. It's just to make you harder to track after you get unhooked. That's fine. I don't really have an issue with that. It's like a little mini short Off the Record effect. That's fine. I don't really care. As long as you're not straight up tunneling people off hooks, this is not going to affect you in any way. Even if you are tunneling people, you can still probably find them. So it's not going to be a huge deal for most people. I think that's completely fine. Tome's lore update. I don't care. I don't think I've opened the tome ever in my life. Pixel Bush, I'm sure will have great information about that. The shape. Major rework again. So they have replaced pretty much the entire playstyle of the killer. You no longer have a gradually increasing set of evil withins. You now have 2 modes, Stalker mode and Pursuer mode. In Stalker mode, you're basically Tier 1 Myers, where you're undetectable, no Tertius, you move very slowly, and you can stalk people. You then have Pursuer mode, which is regular movement speed, a 24-meter Tertius, which is still smaller. It's still like Tier 2, basically. And then increased vault speed, bonuses to lunge range, break speed, stun recovery, and cannot stalk survivor. So you basically get that base kit Enduring, you get base kit Brutal Strength, a little bit of base kit Coup de Grace, so I'm sure it's not going to be as strong as those perks, but you get a little bit of it, which is really neat. Actually, something I suggested a very long time ago in my Myers Rework video. It seems they've actually added that because he doesn't really have much else. So I think that's cool. But he can't stalk survivors in this mode. He'll have to go back to his Stalker mode if he wants to do that. How they're going to be toggled, is there a cooldown? Is there a charge bar for it? I don't know, but I guess we'll see. Now, once the stock meter is full, Evil Incarnate mode can be triggered at will, granting the following effects for a limited time. Survivors no longer become exposed, though. So this is a massive, massive change to how Myers works. The really only strength that Myers had was you can have a 99 to Tier 2, sneak up on someone with Tier 2, look at them for 0.1 seconds, Tier 3, one-shot them. That gave Myers some strength, which is nice, but also it was pretty miserable to go against as Survivor. Because you could have a teammate that was just teabagging, getting stalked the entire time. You're just working on a gen. He sneaks up on you with 8-meter Tertius with monitor views. You have no time to react. pops tier 3 on you, and now you're dying because your teammate got stalked. It doesn't really ever feel good to play against that at all. So I respect them trying to change that. But Survivor's not getting exposed is a massive, massive change. But when he goes in Evil Incarnate mode, here's what happens. He gets a 40-meter tear radius, an even further increased vault speed, probably like Tier 3 Myers, or perhaps even faster than Tier 3 Myers. We'll see. He gets Slaughtering Strike, which is hilarious because they just made Myers dash slop. I almost want to call Pixel Bush right now and just get a very quick interview here to see what he thinks about that. But overall, I think this is a change that I don't know how I'm going to be feeling with. I think it is, for the most part, fine. I just think it's kind of like lazy, in my opinion. It basically what this is they just gave him Pig's Ambush. That's what it looks like. Charge Slaughtering Strike is Charge Ambush, except this ambush can actually break pallets. So it's just kind of stronger than Pig's Ambush. I feel like it's slightly slower than Pig's Ambush from what I can tell. Again, we'll have to test this in the PTB. The movement speed is not quite as fast as Ambush, but yeah, it's kind of, it's just Pig's Ambush, but you can break pallets with it as well. Which again, as far as giving him a chase power, it's fine. It's lazy. I'll just be the first to admit it. That's just lazy as shit. Do I care? Not really. He was so uninteresting that at this point I will take basically anything. But I think that's mostly fine. The question I have here is this going to count as a basic attack or not? Because it says to quickly lunge forward. I don't know if this counts as an ambush attack or this counts as just his regular power. Because if it counts as his regular attack, I could see some synergies with putting exposed perks on Myers, which would be a first because obviously you would never do that anyway. And I think that could be a little interesting. But for the most part, you know, this is just an improved form of ambush because it's going to break pallets and it's going to down survivors in one hit. So I don't know. It's kind of weird that you don't get the regular M1, but now you can do this ambush to get the one hit. I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about this. I'm going to have to play it on the PTB. It does strike me as kind of lazy, but I'm also not really super upset with it because it finally gives Myers a thing to do in a chase, which before he basically... all he could do was throw on Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and surprise someone with a super fast fall, which was pretty strong, but that's kind of all he could do. So I'm mostly okay with that. It is pretty lazy. Stalking mechanics have been changed. There's now no limited pool of stalking anymore, which means you can stalk people forever. Good. I think that there's no reason for there to be a limit. I think that's completely fine. The stalk range has now been nerfed to 32 meters, and you don't stalk people faster from a distance anymore, which I think is kind of a shame, but whatever. Moving while stalking has increased movement speed, but incurs a reduced stalking rate. So now you can move while stalking, but if you're moving while you're stalking, you stalk a bit slower. They think they might have actually changed the base stalking rate as well. Not 100% sure here, but I guess we'll see. Overall, my summary of this is, it's fine. It's lazy, but it's fine. I don't know. I don't really have to go any further than that. It's fine. I'm okay with this, I guess. By moving away from linear evil within tiers, we wanted to give players more tools they can use to adapt to each trial's unique situations while keeping the core of what makes them the shape. Slaughtering Strike makes for a high-threat ambush-style gameplay, offering up instant-down opportunity with extended lunge that's particularly effective in loops and for ripping through pallets quickly. Understanding his kit has changed quite a lot. We've done a pass on all add-ons, reworking them to have more unique effects, in particular for those who prefer his old playstyle. Rigor and Tough to Hair will change Evil Incarnate to function more like old Myers, offering an exposed effect and no Slaughtering Strike. Stay tuned for more patch notes. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, Tombstone is going to be removed because they also added the ability to kill survivors permanently that are on death hook. So you can grab and kill survivors that are on death hook. So you basically get a tombstone on people that are about to die anyway, which is a buff for sure because saving yourself the time having to walk to a hook or down them and then worry them or something like that, that can be very useful. It can also circumvent certain perks. I'm a little concerned with that because it does mean when someone's on death hook, you can tunnel them out right off the hook. And in fact, you can face camp them, eat the self on hook, trigger Evil Incarnate, and then just kill them instantly. I think they need to realize that that's going to happen and maybe have some type of mitigation there. But overall, I think that's fine. I just think people are going to do that, and that's going to suck ass because now that's a base kit feature, and you don't even need Tombstone for that anymore. So they need to address that before it goes live, for sure, because people will abuse the shit out of that. Clown, increased activation time of the Afterpiece Antidote, thank God, and increased how long the Afterpiece Tonic hindered effect lingers after leaving smoke. So they kind of just reverted Clown. Okay. Great work, Behavior. You did great with Clown. Unknown. Increased the additional time added to weaken when injured by a UVX. Fantastic. Increased movement speed recovery after teleporting. Great. Increased movement speed recovery. I don't know if that's saying they're increasing the recovery rate or increasing the time that you're recovering. I think it's a buff from what I'm seeing from that wording. I think it's a buff. Increased camera vertical range, which I think is fine. I don't know why he was so limited there, and adjusted several add-ons. This is a change I wanted to happen to Unknown for a while. Unknown was always an extremely punishing killer. You basically had to be a master Unknown to get any use out of him. So this is a fantastic change. I'm very, very happy to see. It seems like it's going to give a little bit more of a lenient window, and frankly, in my opinion, a much-needed buff to a killer who fundamentally is very cool, but a little underpowered. So that's a great change in my opinion. I think that is great. Dracula, vampire form, reduced Hellfire cooldown, increased Hellfire pillars by 1, reduced Hellfire charge movement speed, and increased slowdown time after casting Hellfire. For wolf form, the pounce attack charge time was increased, the scent orb spawn time was increased, and for bat form, increased movement friction to make flying easier to control. Basically, in a nutshell, they buffed Hellfire, they nerfed wolf form, and made a slight quality of life change to bat form. So I think that is fine, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Is this a straight buff? They reduce the charging movement speed, but also increase the rate at which you can use it and the length of it. Actually, this is more of like a side grade. I feel like this is more of a side grade. I don't know. I don't even think they should have increased the slowdown after casting Hellfire. What they should have done is increase the slowdown after canceling Hellfire, because getting zoned by a fake Hellfire 50 times in a row is just boring. But after casting it, I don't know. This should say after canceling Hellfire, and then I think that'd be a good change. But I think nerfing wolf form very slightly is fine. I mean, Dracula is one of the best killers in the game. Him getting a very tiny nerf here, he'll be just fine. He's still probably like the 5th best killer in the game, so no tears shed over that, but kind of weird changes here, I guess. Ghoul, when grabbing a survivor on the other side of a vault with Kagune Leap, the survivor is released at the start of the Ghoul's vault instead of at the end. This is to basically try to fix the kidnap tech, which I'm sure it will, and I think that's great. It shouldn't be happening. That's fine. Oni, hooking a survivor now spawns more blood orbs. We understand that the changes we're making to address slugging, this will impact the Oni slightly, so we want to mitigate this. That's good. They were acknowledging that. By turning hook survivors into a greater source of power gauge buildup, the Oni is rewarded more quickly, snowballing by hooking. That's good. So when you hook a survivor, I think they spawn 2 blood orbs. If they want to make this an accurate change, they should spawn like 5 times that. They should spawn like 10 blood orbs. Otherwise, slugging people with Oni is still going to be the best choice. You need to really incentivize a lot hooking survivors for this to be a good thing. So if they make it go from like 2 to 8 or 10, I think this will be fine and kind of worth it. So the last thing was for perk updates. It just says updated various perks. This is going to be something we're going to have to test on the PTB. But overall, what an absolutely crazy patch. In summary, real quick here, I think the slugging changes are not going to do too much. I think they should not fully implement the recovering while moving to prevent certain abusable scenarios. But overall, it's fine. No big deal. The tunneling changes are potentially massive depending on the numbers. It's really wonderful. They are acknowledging other killers exist that are too strong, and so they need to have effects lessened for them. It's really nice that they're trying to incentivize fresh hooks. That is really, really good too. I don't know how I feel about this because this information is something that killers have relied on since day one of the game. That's going to be a nerf to a lot of killers, so this shit is all over the place. It's going to be something I need to test more here. But this is going to be shaking the game up in a massive way regardless. Elusive, fine, no big deal. Shape changes. Overall, without a doubt, a buff. Without a doubt. No question. I just think it's a bit lazy, but fine. It's a weak killer that's getting a buff. Hard to complain about that. Clown, whatever. No known. Great. So overall, yeah, absolutely crazy patch. Very excited to see this PTB and mess around with it for a while. But that is going to be it for me. I am excited for the chaos. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.